Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm bringing you an early access review for Cornucopia. This game is a 2.5D farming sim title published and actively developed by Subconscious Games, which I believe might be a solo dev using some contracted work. Whatever the case may be, they've built a strong foundation for a farming sim game that brings some new ideas to the mix, for better or worse, and I think it allows them to build a really decent game when it eventually releases. Subconscious Games seems dedicated to completing the game and realizing their vision for it, as seen through their updates and the community's constant praise of the devs' interaction in the Discord channel. So with all that said, please keep in mind this is an early access title, and things may change. And I say that because I feel like I had a ton of gripes with it, despite desperately wanting to like the game. Oh, and before I go on any further, I did receive this key from the developer. Thank you very much, Subconscious Games. But this obviously won't affect my opinions. So without further ado, let's get into the review. Starting off with the presentation, as mentioned, it's a 2.5D perspective that looks pretty good for the most part. It was neat how it could allow for different cinematic angles from a 2D or a more 3D perspective depending on which camera the game is using. However, I did think it looked rough in some parts, especially the edge of a map where it's just a sheer drop. I'm unsure how this might be changed other than cluttering the edge with things like trees or bushes or other objects to act as a wall. It wasn't really a big deal, and I did eventually get over it. I also didn't like how when you went behind a building, the whole thing would just disappear instead of turning transparent like what would be done with trees. There was a building or two that didn't do either of these things, making it practically impossible to get items behind it. This perspective also made it a bit difficult to gauge what your character might be interacting with. However, one surprising and welcome feature of the game is the ability to adjust the camera to how you want to play. You can adjust the zoom and tilt of the camera to have a more traditional top-down gameplay, or the original default settings. It's a nice touch. Outside of that, I thought the graphics were decent. I'm never the biggest fan of mixing 3D elements with 2D elements, but I think it was done nicely here. The pixel art is great for the items as well as the characters. I especially liked how visually diverse the cast of characters was. Although, one thing that irked me a bit was there didn't seem to be any visual changes between seasons. I think that might not be true for winter since I did see a screenshot with snow, but I only played around to the middle of autumn before stopping to make the review. The story actually starts out with an interesting beginning rather than the typical "you inherited this farm from XYZ relative." Instead, villagers discover you in the mines completely encased in ice. After thawing you out and being resuscitated in the local hospital, you return to the village where, well, you inherit a farm. But hey, it's a farming sim. What did you expect? You later find out that you're displaced by about 100 years and you probably were trying to stop some old evil. Unfortunately, the story doesn't really do much with this time displacement bit, despite it probably being the single most interesting thing about the entire main plot in my opinion. The main quest involves the player gathering these gems to unlock doors at the bottom of dungeons in order to beat a boss there and chip away at this evil plaguing the town. I'd say there'd be spoilers, but really, there's not too much. All the cutscenes involved in getting the gems didn't really directly relate to the main quest at all besides getting the MacGuffin itself. In fact, in most instances, the player has nothing to do with the cutscenes at hand. Most of them had zero input from the player at all, and some of them didn't even feature the player in the scene. Instead, I felt like a fly on a wall a lot of the time just watching stuff unfold. This really broke my sense of feeling like I was part of the town or even the story. These gemstone quests, I guess you could call them, are very abrupt. You could easily trigger the next cutscene by just going to the appropriate area. There's no waiting, so everything feels so fast-paced. And outside of that specific quest line, it never seemed to be mentioned again or any of the character's personal development that happens within the quest. The main quest execution could be better, but I know that many people only really care about the characters in the farming sim game. As mentioned earlier, there are a ton of characters, and they are a particularly diverse cast. Of course, that also means there's a bunch of dateables as well. Many of them are typical attractive bachelor or bachelorettes, but the devs went the extra mile to include other non-traditional marriageable candidates of various body types and ages, and I think that's rather commendable. However, many of these characters seem only skin deep. The only dialogue they have that really gives a glimpse into their personality is the basic daily dialogue, and that doesn't always produce anything meaningful. Which, it wouldn't be necessary, but these characters don't really seem to have events associated with them in the same way they might be used for heavy lifting of character development in other farming sims. As far as I could tell, the cutscenes that happened were random, and I wasn't sure they really had much to do with my relationship with any of them or not. Especially because, as mentioned, I was hardly ever a part of these cutscenes to begin with. And once you start dating someone, then that's the kill switch for their personality. Instead, their dialogue will consist of a bunch of general dating-related dialogue consisting of love affirmations, how you make them feel, and how happy they are in the relationship. The dialogue does nothing to incorporate any personality they might have had into it, and that's really unfortunate. Once married, it's more the same as well. In fact, the hard events, or the date scenes in this case, are very lacking. First, these dialogues are the same no matter who you're dating, or so much as I could tell, and I was dating 3 people at the same time. And furthermore, the writing is so cringy. No one talks like this. I don't want to point fingers, especially without any evidence, but I couldn't help but feel like an AI wrote these scenes. Overall, much of the dialogue and cutscenes just didn't do it for me. Cutscenes all felt random. If I take a moment to compare it to Stardew Valley, which is going to have inevitable comparisons, the hard events in that game help build a story arc for each character, whether romanceable or otherwise. In Cornucopia, the cutscenes don't do that much to expand on the character, with the cutscenes feeling seemingly random, sometimes repeat themselves, or having vapid dialogue that doesn't bring out the character's personality at all. Obviously, this boils down to my own preferences and overall opinion, but I really hope that a dialogue overhaul update is in the works for the future as a way to expand on the cast and breathe some life into them. When it comes to the gameplay, where do I start? I had several pages of notes jotted down that it was hard to gather my thoughts together. I suppose I'll start with what Cornucopia does that is different from other farming sim titles. Since this is a farming sim, I may as well start with the farming. Cornucopia uses a unique farming system in that you can plant any kind of seed on tilled soil, regardless of the season, and always get produce. However, there are different types of soil and nutrient values on each space that will affect how much yields you'll get. So for instance, you might have a seed that requires a clay-type soil and needs higher nutrient values for nitrogen and potassium. If you could match that along with the season it's supposed to be grown in, then you could get a lot more yields and larger produce. Originally, I wasn't a fan of it, but it did kinda grow on me. Heh, no pun intended. At first, the system seemed overly convoluted and had way too many things to track. However, as I tried to improve my soil quality through various types of compost, there was a sense of satisfaction with raising the values and being able to match the seeds to appropriate plots. There are a ton of plots though, and it would be a monumental challenge to attempt to cultivate all of your soil for optimal planting. I would think only the most dedicated of players would bother, but it is a neat system nonetheless. This is also a good place to point out that tools each have a special ability. In other farming sims, you might get the same results through upgrading your tools. In Cornucopia, they have a meter that builds, and periodically you could use a charged up usage, such as watering more plants at once, felling a tree in one hit, etc. Since there was no blacksmith, I didn't think there was a way to upgrade your tools at all, and admittedly, it didn't seem necessary. However, your tools upgrade when you reach certain level milestones, which was a different way of doing it. I never really noticed much difference, but I imagine they had to have helped me in some way. Another thing that can help you with your daily tasks and a lot of other things is the game's other unique mechanic being the equipable card system. Through buying card packs at vending machines, receiving them as rewards, or just finding them, you could receive many different kinds of cards. Some of these are redeemable scratch cards that can net you different items and cooking recipes. Others are quest cards where you have to perform a certain task like kill X number of monsters or speak with X villager to get a reward. Most notably were the buff cards you could get that could help you in combat, traversal, doing various tasks like woodcutting, mining, etc., The caveat was you could only have up to 4 equipped at a time and can't change them unless their duration runs out or you choose to discard one. Some of them were helpful, but I felt the game was already so easy that they weren't really necessary. To be fair, I would never expect a farming sim to be a difficult experience. The card system was different though. I didn't engage with it as much as I could have and found myself laden with a bunch of cards. I'd imagine that players more skilled than me would find ways to really be efficient with using the cards to their fullest. Pets also play a slightly different role than the traditional farming game. And by pets, I really just mean the farm animals you take care of, not the dog you have at the start of the game. I would say they might act more like monsters in Rune Factory. The pets can help you with various tasks that you perform like mining and woodcutting, and they also help with fighting in the dungeons. As you improve your relationship with them, you can eventually ride them around as mounts. Visually, they can all have different aesthetics, and there is a whole breeding mechanic. This involves feeding each animal a special mating nut that makes them hot and bothered. After some time, you'll see a new baby animal in the barn or a hatched chick in the coop. They take on characteristics of their parents, however, I wasn't sure if this implied to any stats or abilities, or if it was only the aesthetics. To be fair, I didn't explore this too much, but maybe people who really like breeding mechanics, like in Pokemon, might find this enjoyable. One of the ways you can acquire animals is through a couple different vending machines that dispense cows or chickens. Yeah, a vending machine. A bit weird, but actually that's boring next to the working auction house. Players can use the auction house to buy farm animals and other items, and also sell items or their own farm animals. Various NPCs can bid on items along with the player, and obviously the highest bidder wins. The idea is really cool, but not as fleshed out as it could be in terms of immersion. First off, despite it being a large auction house, you don't see anyone there besides Charlotte, the cow-obsessed rancher. It would really liven things up and make the auction house more exciting to actually see the people bidding. That said, the people bidding are members of the town, and in many instances, it makes no sense. Many characters in town would have nothing to do with a farm animal, yet are wasting hundreds of dollars buying animals they have no way to care for or intent on caring for. This mechanic would be much more immersive if it made more sense in the world it was in. The one other notable unique aspect to the game that I'd like to point out is Cornucopia's take on fishing. It seems that many farming sim games either go with the basics or occasionally try something different. In this case, something different was tried. Here you have to drop some balls down a board and try and aim for the fish you're going for, popping bubbles along the way, usually causing your ball to ricochet somewhere else. I thought it was commendable, but I don't think it works that well. It seemed largely based on luck rather than skill on how your balls would land. I really had no idea how the fishing skill or bait really played any role in the minigame other than having a higher chance of getting a larger fish. And it really took too long. I eventually would just start spamming wherever on the board and taking whatever it gave me because, frankly, it didn't really seem to matter, especially since I didn't really engage with cooking at all. Now I'd like to take the time to talk about the various quality of life features the devs added to the game, or so-called quality of life depending on how you see them. One of the more almost immediately noticeable ones is the seemingly bottomless inventory. Your backpack space is limited, with upgrades to your pack being available, as is the case with other farming sim titles. However, in Cornucopia, if you pick up an item that can't fit in your inventory, then it immediately gets transported to your storage shed. At first, this may seem like a godsend. You no longer need to worry about what you can and can't carry. That's great. Except, I'd argue that needing to have that inventory management was useful in helping with the pacing, which I have a lot of thoughts on later, and with just deciding what is useful or valuable and what's not. Instead, the player can pick up anything and everything, and this creates a very different problem. Instead of managing the inventory along the way, you now have a storage shed filled with all sorts of random things you picked up, and it gets overwhelming fast because the game floods you with all sorts of items. Furthermore, there was no good way to sort items other than the basic sort, which I think was by type. Normally in these games, I would create separate chests for different types of items, but you can't do that here. You can get separate tabs in the storage shed, but only after you've upgraded it. I didn't see the need to keep most of the items I gathered, so I sold almost everything I picked up in order to avoid dealing with this inventory management nightmare. In regards to the pacing of the game, things move too quickly in my opinion. What I mean by that is by the end of the first season, spring, I completed the entirety of the main quest. Before the middle of the summer, still in the first year, I had built all of the farm upgrades, which included the house, barn, coop, shed, and repaired the greenhouse. And before the end of summer, I had already gotten married to someone, but I could have done it before the end of the first season because I had max hearts with someone else, but decided I wanted to marry the ghost girl. To me, all of this felt way too fast. As mentioned, I think the lack of needing to be conscious of what you pick up is a factor to this, as it makes it way too easy to gather whatever you need, and obviously it allows you to earn money faster. Although the game also doesn't have any sort of time management, which I think is incredibly important for a game like this. Some of the fun for me in other farming sims like Stardew Valley is going about my daily schedule and trying to optimize how I approach things so I could use my time wisely each day. But you don't need to worry about sleeping in Cornucopia. You probably will, in the beginning, to recover your energy, but it gets really easy to amass a sheer amount of consumable items to replenish your energy without ever needing to go to bed. Additionally, you could fast travel to many places throughout the game world, which also reduces any time it takes to get to places, trivializes the time management even further, because practically any NPC or shop is within arm's reach from a fast travel point. I'm not one for putting in unnecessary padding in a game, but I now have a much better understanding of why things like stopgaps are in games. They create a sense of accomplishment and meaning behind the said task you're working on. And in the case with the farming sim, they help create a bit more of a connection with the world your character resides in. One major example in lacking connection with the world is how you initiate dates. Once you start dating, the dates are triggered randomly in a few different locations. The problem was that many of these locations I would never travel to or through, and this was because it simply wasn't necessary because I either had a more convenient fast travel point or never needed to go to said place. I think this is a huge problem if players are supposed to be interacting in the world in this way. These places shouldn't be something that could be easily skipped over. In fact, the only reason I was able to figure this out is because I looked it up on the game's Steam forums. Now, a lot of what I said may sound kinda bad, so I want to end this section off with a few more things that I liked about the gameplay. First and foremost, the ability to save anywhere and at any time was really nice. I hate it when games force you to save at certain checkpoints or, in the case with farming sims, when you end the day. Sometimes I think I can play through that whole day, but I can't, so being able to save anywhere was great. I also really appreciated that the NPCs all have schedules, and you could see them physically walk from point A to point B. Many farming sims like to take a shortcut of just having them appear wherever the NPC needs to be. Seeing them walk around goes a long way to make the town feel alive. Finally, I thought it was a clever idea to learn aspects of the character as you progress in their relationship, which in this case is their birthday and 2 favorite items. You could also unlock special cooking recipes from them. I thought learning about them gradually was really smart and makes a lot of sense. Why should I automatically know every villager's birthday? I think there could be more elements to this, like maybe learning about aspirations, dislikes, other favorite things, maybe leaning more into a dating sim side of things for this mechanic. Either way, it's a smart idea that I hope to see adopted in other farming sim titles. Oh, and actually there's one more thing I'd be remiss not to mention, and that is the decorating. There's a lot of it. Obviously, it's a given that you can decorate your home and farm, but there are 3 other houses you can purchase and also decorate to your heart's content. Furthermore, as you build your friendships with various NPCs, you could choose how to decorate each one of their rooms. Personally, I didn't really touch this system too much since it's not something I care for. Fans of Animal Crossing or builders in The Sims will probably like this feature a lot. I had so many other things that I jotted down to mention, but I think this is good enough to get a sense for the gameplay and my thoughts. Any more than this and it would really be getting into the weeds, which isn't fair to the developers since their game is a work in progress. And that brings us to the value and my final thoughts. But first, if you're enjoying the review or found it helpful, please consider giving it a like, as that helps me out greatly with the YouTube algorithm gods. Cornucopia runs for $24.99 USD in early access, and I put just slightly under 30 hours into the game. As mentioned, I did complete many big milestone tasks, but I didn't collect every item in the game, I didn't build friendships with everyone in town, I didn't even complete my first year, making it only to the middle of autumn. This was in part because there were no working festivals past summer, but they are planned, and because I felt I accomplished most everything that mattered to me, along with getting a good sense of the game, of course. This is all to say that there was more content I could have engaged with if I so chose. However, I'd be lying if I said that I enjoyed every minute of the game. It's not a bad game though. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's more of a strong foundation for things to come, assuming the developers expand on it further. I imagine that some of the design decisions won't change, which will probably make someone like me not want to play it any further, but that doesn't mean there aren't a ton of people that will ultimately like some of these choices. The dev has shown they are committed to finishing this game with major updates happening on around a bi-monthly basis or less. Personally, I think the price for early access is a bit much, but perhaps with the full release it will be worth it. Obviously, if you like it and you want to support the dev, then I think you can at least get some value out of it. If you played the game yourself, then let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you haven't, let me know if this sounds like something you'd be interested in, or if you have any other questions. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.